Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life. Today I am back with my February reading wrap up. I read 14 books in February and it was a pretty good reading month. I did quite a bit of rereading and I read a number of books that I really enjoyed, and I think without further ado, I'm just going to dive right in. The first book that I finished in February, I actually started in the end of January, but finished it on February 2nd, I believe. And that is Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I think pretty much everyone's familiar with Laura Ingalls Wilder and the Little House on the Prairie series. This is the first book. This was actually a reread for me. I did read this when I was a child, but I didn't remember that much about it other than, what I know about Little House on the Prairie from having grown up watching the television series. But I don't believe I read any further into the series, and I've mentioned before that I'm going to be reading through the at least 5 books that I own in the series this year. I'm planning to read Little House on the Prairie this month for middle grade March, and I really love the Ingalls, and I just can't get enough of them, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with their family. So this is a lovely introduction to the series, and I look forward to much, much more. Highly, highly recommend. The next book I read in February was Frances and Bernard by Carleen Bauer. This was off of my TBR 24 in 24 stack, and this book has been sitting on my shelf for, I can't even tell you how long. I think this is Christmas 2013. So I'm going to say that this has been sitting on my shelf for over 10 years. This book is an epistolary novel, but it is based on the letters between Flannery O'Connor and the writer Robert Lowell. They were friends, and this novel reimagines that friendship, and you get to learn about the relationship between these two writers, who in the book are called Frances and Bernard. And it's really just about their friendship. They meet at a writer's retreat, and it just follows them throughout the years. And it was very lovely. It's very literary. It is got a lot of discussion about faith and religion and writing. And so it's a little bit erudite in that respect, but I was just in the mood for it. I don't know that it'll be a favorite of mine, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I believe I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars. And yes, I would definitely recommend it if you like epistolary novels in particular. The next book I read was an audiobook of Death of a Traveling Man by M.C. Beaton. This is number 9 in the Hamish Macbeth mystery series. I enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars, and I felt like we got a little forward motion in Hamish's personal life in this one. And the mystery itself was completely satisfactory, and I found it plausible, which is always good in a mystery. And yeah, I was just happy to have this as sort of a palate cleanser between other books that I was reading, and to just kind of listen to on my walks and in my car. And I've really been enjoying the Hamish Macbeth series in that way. Nothing earth-shattering about this mystery series. It's not the best mysteries I've ever read, but they're just fun and light. And for the most part, I enjoy Hamish, though I will have some thoughts about the most recent audiobook I've listened to, which I will talk about in my March wrap-up, so stay tuned for that. The next book I read was Clouds of Witness by Dorothy L. Sayers. This is book 2 in the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery series. And in Clouds of Witness, actually Lord Peter's brother is put on trial for murder. So that adds kind of an element of intensity to this book that we didn't have in the first book. I found the plot much easier to follow in this one. I think a lot of people have trouble with her first book, Whose Body? It is a little bit difficult to follow. So I will say, if you've read that one and you don't think Lord Peter is for you, maybe move on in the series and give the next couple of books a try and then see what you think. Because I don't feel the first book is indicative of the series as a whole. And I do think this is one that gets better as it goes along. I definitely enjoyed Clouds of Witness better than I did the first book, and I have high hopes for book 3, which I'm going to read this month. I really felt like the plot was more tightly pulled together in this one, and I really liked that we got to meet more of Lord Peter's family and friends, so that was really interesting and just helps you get more acclimated into his world. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I definitely think this is a series that's getting stronger as it goes. Next up is the book I read for my Cozy Reader book club, and that was The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I, like so many others, love the movie of The Princess Bride. I have seen it, I don't even know how many times. And actually, just recently we watched it with my son, and he is 10, and he thoroughly enjoyed it as well, thought it was very funny, which is high praise from him. And so I was very interested to read the book and see how it compares to the movie. Certainly the book, I mean, it's fairly thick, and it's definitely much more, fleshed out than the movie is, but I don't know that adds anything that the movie didn't give. And I feel like actually the movie distilled the book to its best parts. William Goldman has set up The Princess Bride as if the country of Florin is real. The book was supposed to have been written by S. Morgenstern, and William Goldman is supposedly just edited it and made it more readable, and then he interjects himself into the story to kind of like tell you things about like what he did to the manuscript and things about his life. And there are some things I don't love about his voice when he interjects himself in that way, and that definitely detracted from reading the story. And I think all of us in my book club felt kind of the same, that the book was a little bit disappointing. I don't think it holds up as well as the movie does. There's some misogyny and other things that I didn't really appreciate coming through in the voice of William Goldman. And no doubt he's an excellent screenwriter, but as a novelist, I think it fell a little bit flat for me, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was good. I mean, I'm glad I read it, but I think I'll stick to the movie from now on, which how often can you say that about a book? My next book was The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 3 by Beth Brower. I just love this series. I am trying not to whip my way through it, because then I'll just be waiting for book 8 to come out, which I'm hoping is coming out this year or maybe early next year. So I'm trying to pace myself. I haven't started volume 4 yet, but we again follow Emma. I don't want to give too much away about these books because I think you should just go into them and enjoy them. They're so, so fun. Yeah, that's all. Love, 5 stars. Couldn't love it more. My next book was actually a reread, and I wasn't planning to read this, but I was just kind of in the mood for something a little bit quick and light, and it's February, it was Valentine's Day, and who doesn't like a little bit of like a love story? And this is sort of a love story, and it is a very unique book series, and I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it right now. And that is the Griffin and Sabine series by Nick Bantock. This says an extraordinary correspondence, and it really is. This series of books, because there are, oh gosh, I think there's like 6, maybe 7 books in this series. I have the first 4, I believe, and I've read a couple more, but I'm not sure if I've finished the entire series or not. It's gone. It's been written over the course of many, many years. So this book was published in 1991, and I believe my mom gave me this copy. She gave me many of my books, and I just fell in love with it. The fun thing about this book, it's almost like an art book as much as it is a story, and it's epistolary. Again, can you sense a theme? And it's all done, like it starts out and there's postcards, and then as it moves along, the 2 correspondents, Griffin and Sabine, start to write letters to one another. And the letters are actually in an envelope. And so you pull them out. I don't want to lose where this one goes. And then you read the letter as if you were reading an actual letter. And I think that's so charming. I just love that. So Griffin is an artist, and is he living in London when this starts? I think he might be. But he gets this letter from Sabine, and it says, Griffin, it's good to get in touch with you at last. Could I have one of your fish postcards? I think you were right. The wine glass has more impact than the cup. But Griffin has never met a woman named Sabine. How did she know him? How did she know his artwork? Who is she? And then you begin their correspondence, and you get to find out about what is going on. And then it's not wholly clear what is going on. And you really have to read the whole series to kind of get a better understanding. And still it leaves things, at least as far as I've read, a little bit ambiguous. But this is lovely. You can read it in about half an hour maybe. It's very short, but it's just wonderful. And the artwork is amazing. And like I said, you get to pull out those letters. I love really unique books like this. Very fun. And next was another reread, which is Jane and Prudence by Barbara Pym. It's been quite a few years since I read this one, so I actually didn't remember that much about it, but this was February's selection for the Quiet Classics group on Instagram, and I really wanted to reread this because I am enjoying Barbara Pym right now. This is about Jane and Prudence. They are unlikely friends because Jane is married, she's got a grown daughter, and Prudence is a single woman who works in London, and Jane is a vicar's wife, and she's not the best vicar's wife, maybe. Or she's not, I don't want to say she's not the best. She's not your typical vicar's wife. She's not a good housekeeper. She's not a good cook. She's not really into domestic things of any kind. Really, she should have been a writer. And Barbara Pym really kind of tackles the roles that women found themselves stuck into. She's got a very subversive way of talking about that without seeming to talk about that. And I really appreciate that part of her writing. Okay, so I'm just going to read one short quote from here. So the table held only the roses, a book of poems that Fabian had given her, and a novel of the kind that Prudence enjoyed, well written and tortuous, with a good dash of culture, an inevitable, unhappy, or indefinite ending, which was so like life. That quote, to me, sums up Barbara Pym's writing in a nutshell. I think that's exactly the type of book that she enjoyed writing, and that's exactly the type of novel that Jane and Prudence is. It's not going to necessarily have everything neatly tied up in a bow, but she's really good at being insightful about women's lives and giving you a little bit of a slice of life. And she kind of walks a little bit of a line. She's not really super cozy. Her books always have a bit of an edge to them, or a little bit of a bite. And I kind of like that about her. I gave this 4.5 stars on my reread. I really, really enjoyed it. My next book was also off of my TBR 24 in 24, and that is Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper. This book takes place in Canada, and in this we follow Etta. She's 83 years old, and she has decided to walk across the country to go see the ocean for the first time. She has never been to the ocean. And she leaves a note for her husband. It says, Otto, I've gone. I've never seen the water, so I've gone there. Don't worry, I've left you the truck. I can walk. I will try to remember to come back. Yours always, Etta. Otto finds the note in their kitchen of their farmhouse in windswept Saskatchewan. 83-year-old Etta will be walking more than 1,000 miles to see the ocean, but Otto understands. He took his own journey once to fight in a faraway land. With Etta gone, Otto struggles with his demons of war, while their friend Russell pursues the woman he has loved from afar. And James? Well, James you have to meet on the page. Etta and Otto and Russell and James is a mesmerizing story of unsung heroes, last great adventures, and indestructible love. I know there has been a lot of resurgence of stories surrounding the octogenarian protagonist recently. This one was actually written, let me see, in 2015. So a little bit before I think that Resurgence was really having its heyday. And I really enjoyed this very much. It's a bit of a journey, both physical and mental and emotional. And I really liked the fleshing out of how you learn about Etta and Otto and Russell and James and their relationship and what's really going on with all of them. And I've found this just beautiful. The writing is really good and the story moves along, and I enjoyed it very much. Gave this one 4 stars, and I'm so glad I finally read it. This was one of the very first books I ever posted about on my Bookstagram account, so it feels wonderful to have checked it off my TBR. My next book was yet another reread, and that was A Big Storm Knocked It Over by Laurie Colwin. I'm going through a bit of a Laurie Colwin rereading phase right now, which is perfectly a-okay with me. In A Big Storm Knocked It Over, we follow Jane Louise Parker. She has just married a man whose native decency leaves her almost breathless at her good fortune. After the wedding, she returns to work at a small and Tony publishing house whose finances are in disarray. Alongside her best friend Edie, Jane Louise patiently waits to become pregnant, wondering if a baby will provide a sense of rootedness that seems to elude her. When that longed-for child arrives, it transforms the Parkers' lives in a way that is as unexpected as it is rapturous. So this is just about Jane Louise and her husband and their friends and their life as newlyweds and what happens when a baby arrives. So I'm just going to read a short quote, which I think will give you kind of an idea of what Laurie Colwin's writing style is like. It was one of those gentle days in spring when the slight breeze has blown away the air pollution and the flowers are out on the ornamental cherry, crabapple, and mimosa trees. People smile at each other on the street and turn their faces up to the sun. Urban lovers wander arm in arm, drifting in and out of bookshops. At the outdoor cafes, people feed ice cream to their toddlers or sit happily reading the Saturday paper. The doors to the shops are open. It is too mild for heat and too cool for air conditioning, the perfect weather for perambulating around a city. She's a joy. I love her writing so very much, and I'm so sad that she wasn't able to give us more stories than she did, but I will keep rereading them to my heart's content. My next read was The Blue Bedroom and Other Stories by Rosamund Pilcher. This is a short story collection, and I often have a love-hate relationship with short story collections. I think, as many people do, you'll like some of the stories, you won't like others. But this collection is maybe the first short story collection I've ever read where I thoroughly loved every single story in here. I cannot recommend this collection enough, especially if you're a Rosamund Pilcher fan. Read this book. I think sometimes her shorter novels, to me, I always feel like I want them to be a little bit meatier, like her big, long, saga novels that she writes, like The Shell Seekers and Coming Home. But I feel like these short stories, she's really distilled down the essence of those sagas into these very bite-sized pieces, and it just worked for me. I really loved all of them. The title story in particular is excellent, and I can't recommend this enough. And this has been sitting on my shelf for a while now, and so I can check this one off my 50th year TBR challenge. So yay for that. Then the next book I read, or rather listened to on audio, was Death of a Nag by M.C. Beaton, which is actually number 11 in the Hamish Macbeth series. I skipped number 10, not intentionally, but my library did not have number 10 available on audio when I wanted to listen to it. And they have subsequently gotten it on audio, and I'm currently listening to it now. So I've sort of listened to 10 and 11 out of order, but that's okay. I mean, there was a spoiler in this one, but basically Hamish goes off on a little holiday And while he's there, someone dies, of course. And it's just about the people he meets there, and they're all suspects, basically. And he helps to solve the crime as he is wont to do. Now I'm reading number 10, and like I said, I will share my thoughts on that one in my March wrap up. I definitely enjoyed number 11, and I think it was one of my favorites of the series. I just felt like it was well plotted, and we just get to see a slightly different side to Hamish as well, which was kind of nice. And it was probably intentional, because I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who feels about number 10 the way I do. And maybe MC Beaton wrote number 11 to help get Hamish back into people's good graces. The next book I read was Music in the Hills by D.E. Stevenson. This is the second book in the Daring Family series. And I read Victoria Cottage and absolutely loved it in January. And I read Music in the Hills, and I'm not sure if I just wasn't quite in the right headspace for it, but while I enjoyed it, I didn't love it as much as I love Victoria Cottage. There are a couple of characters in here that I just found annoying, and Mamie Johnstone, who is Carolyn's sister. Carolyn is the main character in Victoria Cottage, and I liked Mamie. By the end, I really liked her, but I just felt like it took me a little bit longer to get to know her in this book. So the story starts, and we get to know Mamie a little bit, and then James, who's her nephew, he is Carolyn's son from the first book, and he comes because he's going to learn how to farm. That's what he wants to be, is a farmer. James is getting over some heartbreak, and there is a lot going on in this one, actually. There's a bit of a mystery with some sheep that keep going missing, and there's a bit of a romance going on. For whatever reason, I just didn't love this one quite as much as Victoria Cottage, even though I enjoyed it. And I was very happy about what came at the end of this one. I'm glad I read it as part of the series, but Victoria Cottage is definitely my favorite. And then we have made it to my final book that I read in February, and that was my pick for the Read Christie 2024 read-along, and that was The Secret Adversary. This is the very first Tommy and Tuppence book by Agatha Christie, and this one reads sort of more like a spy novel than a mystery. This was a reread for me. I listened to this on audio many years ago. Didn't really remember anything about it, but decided I wanted to reread it in physical book. And I'm so glad I did, because I actually think I enjoyed it more this time around than I did initially. Sometimes when I'm reading mysteries on audio, I kind of space out, so I miss some stuff. That's not good, is it? Anybody else do that when they're listening to audiobooks? And I mean, I know we do that when we're reading physical books too, but somehow I feel like I'm still taking it in a little bit into my brain because I'm reading the words on the page, even if I'm not fully taking them in. But I really liked Tommy and Tuppence. I liked their banter back and forth between them. I thought the mystery in this was maybe a little bit too complicated, but it didn't really detract from the story. And I had my suspicions as to who was the bad guy in this. And I actually had narrowed it down to 2 people, and it turned out that one of them was it. And I always feel good when I guess whodunit in an Agatha Christie, because she is so good at throwing out the red herrings. Like I said, even though I read this before, I couldn't remember whodunit. Then when it was revealed, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I see it now. I definitely enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars, and I am looking forward to reading the next book in the Tommy and Tuppence series, which is actually a short story collection, and I'm going to be reading that this month. That is it for my February reading wrap up. I had a pretty good reading month in February, read a number of really good books. I think I will say that the Blue Bedroom short story collection by Rosamund Pilcher was my very favorite read of the month. I was just perfectly in the mood for it, and it hit that sweet spot. And it's rare that a short story collection makes it to the top of my favorites list, so that is unusual, but I really enjoyed them. I hope you had a wonderful February reading month. Tell me something you read that you absolutely loved. Have you read any of the books that I talked about in this video, and did you love them or not love them, as the case may be? As always, please give this video a like and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye!